Hi, sixth graders. Mrs. Lynn here, coming to you, well, live kind of from our dining room that we've transformed into a classroom for me and an office for my husband. Tonight I'm going to be teaching you, I guess I'm saying tonight because I'm filming this at night, but today I'm going to be teaching you about box and whiskers. It's an interesting kind of graph. I don't know why, but it's a graph that I've always just kind of liked. I find them interesting. Their shape gives you not too much information that you're overwhelmed, but a kind of a general idea of what the data kind of looks like. And yeah, they're called box and whiskers because you're making a box that has some whiskers, lines coming out of it. So you're going to also see that I have taken pictures of all of the steps, the step-by-steps on how to create box and whiskers. And what I recommend for today's video, that this lesson is pretty much going to be completely video based. I really encourage you to pause when you want to write something down. If I'm going too fast, be sure to pause so that you can keep up. But really the majority of what we're doing in class today would be something like a note-taking day that we would have at school. So make sure, first of all, that you are finding those pictures also saved to the assignment. I would write down the 10 steps. So I would truly just pause right now, open up those pictures in another window, or if you can see them well enough right now, pause the video and write down your 10 steps, because as you do more box and whiskers assignments throughout the course of this week, you're going to want to have those steps written down, and it'll be probably a little more challenging to constantly be flipping back and forth between your assignment and the steps. So I know the steps, I'm going to refer to the steps as we go. And again, pause whenever you need to pause, but write down the steps that I'm doing here on my board. I would strongly encourage you also to be doing this with me, because the only way to learn math is by doing math. So we're going to write down these steps together. Hopefully you can make your box and whiskers right along with me. Again, I'll go as slow as I can, but pause if you need to. The textbook, the Data About Us textbook, is where I got this information. And this was the book's introduction example that they just, you know how they come up with some kind of example to start off the problem. So they listed this set of data. I don't even think they give what those numbers represent, but they gave this set of data and show you how to make a box and whiskers out of it. Now you're going to notice that I already have the data in order from least to greatest, and that is step one on our step, is to make sure you have the data in order from least to greatest, just like when we were doing the median. So already ordered least to greatest. Step two is to find the median, like what we were doing in the previous weeks. So remember some of our clues about medians, we were crossing them off one end from the other. I'm not going to cross them off super dark right now because we need to continue to be able to see these numbers. So when I find the median, I'm just going to put my line at the top today instead of through the numbers. If you remember from the previous videos, we do one on the left and one on the right to come up with a middle number. But this is one of those trickier problems where I would like cross off both numbers and then not have anything in the middle. So if you remember, what we did here was find the number exactly in the middle of 60 and 63. Now I know some of you can do that in your head, but if you don't know what's exactly in the middle of 60 and 63, I'll show you off to the side here. That's when we found the mean. We would add up the two numbers and then divide that answer by 2. So 60 plus 63 is 123. And 123 divided by 2 is 61.5. So the median of our data, I'm just going to draw it just like this because it's between two numbers, is 61.5. And if you remember, we would check our work by counting to make sure the same amount of numbers are on the left as they are on the right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the left of the median, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the right of the median. I guess now we could cross both of those out because I found a number in the middle. It's okay that our number, that's the median, is not part of the original data set. So we found the median. Step 3, now this is what's new about a box and whiskers. You're going to find the median of the lower half. So I'm just looking at this lower half. That number is not included, so just my lower half of data, and I'm finding the median of the lower half. So I'm crossing it off in the other direction. And you will see that now I have a perfect middle of the lower half. That is what we call the first quartile, or quartile 1. And I'm going to do the same thing for step 4, is find the middle number of the upper half. So since my median line was right between there, I'm going to look at these numbers. I'm going to cross off going the other direction. And once again, I can find an exact middle of the upper half. That's called the upper quartile, or quartile 3, the third quartile, multiple names for that number, which you're going to see on the steps. So we can call this the first quartile, lower quartile, the upper quartile, the third quartile. The median is also known as the second quartile. Moving on to my next step, step 5 says create a number line that fits the data. And I've already done that to save a little bit of time, so make sure that you're pausing right now if you need to. But when I looked at this data, it went from 34 all the way up to 89, and that would be a pretty big number line. So I chose to be able to go from 34 to 89. I made a number line counting by 5. Now it's not a true number line. I know I didn't put like the number line. I didn't put little hash marks for anything, but it's just kind of like an evenly spaced separation from my lowest to my highest. Started at 30 because it was below, and I went to 90 because it was just above. So there is your step 5, creating a number line. Step 6 is to make a dot above the maximum and minimum. So 34 is my minimum, and I can put a dot, it's about 34, a dot above my minimum. I put a dot above my maximum. So there's my dots for 34. Let's make that one a little bit higher. 34 and 89. Identifying my max and min. Step 7 is make a vertical line above the median. So my median is 61.5. That's looking about right here. Make a vertical line for my median. Step 8 is to make a vertical line above the Q1 and the Q3 numbers. So my Q1 number is 57, another vertical line. My Q3 number is 68, another vertical line. Step 9 is to then draw a rectangle or a box with the median inside. So when we call it a box and whiskers, there's our box and whiskers. Our box is from Q1 to Q3 with the median in the middle. And then comes the whisker part, that's step 10. Draw lines to connect your minimum to the box and your maximum to the box. And there's your box and whiskers for the first set of data that the book has to offer. Now, I'm giving you 2 more examples because you're going to notice here that the median was between 2 numbers. We had an exact number for Q3, we had an exact number for Q1. And just depending upon how many sets of numbers are in your data, your Q1 and Q3 can kind of be found a little bit differently. So I just wanted to give you 3 different examples so that you could try making them. But again, I encourage you to draw these out on your paper, find them along with me, pause whenever I'm going too fast for you because I already have a lot of this information done, okay? So this is some real data that I collected. These are number of children in families. Where did I get my data? Well, my dad had 11 kids in his family. My husband's sister has no kids. We have 3 kids. So I just kind of took people that I know within our families and I wrote down how many children were in their family. So if you were doing this in our classroom, we would be doing the same thing and surveying our students with how many children are in families. But we're gonna go through the same set of steps. I ordered them from least to greatest. So take the time to order them from least to greatest. I will find the middle number, the median, just like before. I'm gonna cross one off from the left, one from the right. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And then once again, I have 2 numbers in the middle. So if I cross off one from the left and one from the right, I wouldn't be left with anything. Like before, I need to know the number exactly between 2 and 3. This one should hopefully be easy enough to do in your head, and I know that my median will be 2.5. Then I find the median of the lower half and the median of the upper half. Just like before, lower half medians crossing one off on the left, one off on the right. But notice here, in our first example, it was an exact number, but for this set of data, because of how many numbers that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each side. This time I had 7 on each side. Since I have 6 on each side, then when I came down to it, my median would be between a 2 and a 2 when I cross them off. And like you saw in the median videos from earlier, between 2 and 2, well, the quartile 1 or the lower quartile would just be considered 2. And the same thing is going to happen for the upper half. It's going to be between 2 numbers. So left and right, left and right. If I did another left and another right, I'd cross both of them off. 5 is quartile 3 or the upper quartile. So between 5 and 5, again, is just 5. Your next step is to create a number line, but my numbers only went from 0 to 11. That wasn't too hard this time to be able just to put all of those numbers on a number line. So if we keep on doing the same steps as before, put a dot at your minimum, put a dot at your maximum. Again, if I'm going too fast for you, just hit pause anytime. Put a dot at your min, put a dot at your max. Put a line at your median, 2.5. Put a line at your lower quartile, 2. Put a line at your upper quartile, 5. Connect your quartiles. Draw in your whiskers. Much quicker that second time around once we have a basic idea of what we're doing. Again, a line at your median, a line at your quartile 1, a line at your quartile 3. Connect your whiskers to your box, your whiskers to the box. What I want you to notice is how the shape of these two are quite different. For this box over here, everything's kind of like decently spaced out. Each whisker is the same length, the sections of the box are the same, about the same size. But this one, we have a much smaller section here, a much bigger section here, and a really long whisker here. And we're going to talk more about that later, but I want you to maybe kind of think about why that's happening. So my last example of people and families, I took the exact same data, but I want you to see what happens when I have the exact same data of number of children and families, but I removed a value. I removed one of the 2's. Okay, so things just slightly change, and I kind of have to squat down here so that you can see all of this, but same steps as before. I put all of my numbers in order, so I hope you take that same time, put all of your numbers in order, make sure you have all of the same ones as me, okay? Just like before, let's find the median. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Ooh, look, this time I have an exact middle of 3. So there's my median, also known as quartile 2. When I find the middle of the lower half, left, right, check it out. This time I also have an exact number for my quartile 1 or my lower quartile, an exact number. Same thing's going to happen on this side. So left and right, and an exact number for my quartile 3 or my upper quartile. Upper quartile. So I want you to kind of notice that when I found my median of the lower half, I did not include the 3 as being crossed off because that number was used as the median. But up here, the 3's were crossed off because the median was some number in between that didn't exist. So the 3 was part of the crossing off process. Down here, 3 was the median. So when I'm finding the median of the upper half, I'm not including that number. When I'm finding the median of the lower half, I'm not including that number because I'm already using it as the median. Why did I do this? Why did I have the exact same data twice except for missing a 2? What I wanted you to be able to see is that with this set of data, the median was between these two 2's, making it a 2. But for this set of data, with one less number, the median is that 2. The median went from 2.5 to exactly 3. And the upper quartile, again, instead of being between 2 5's, was exactly a 5. So just everything shifts a little bit when you remove a value, or if you have a certain number. Sometimes our quartiles and our medians can be betweens, right-ons, betweens, or right-on numbers. So just make sure that you're constantly doing what we were telling you previously. Make sure you count how many are on both sides to get the exact one. Okay, so just like before, I made my number line. My number line looks exactly the same as it has up here because I still went from 0 to 11. And we can draw our dots for our minimum, our dots for my maximum, a line for the median, a line for the lower quartile, a line for the upper quartile. Connect those quartiles in a box. Draw in your whiskers. So those two look pretty similar because they're the same set of data, but notice, I said we're going to talk a little bit more about this, that this section is smaller, this section is bigger. Because we're missing a 2, everything shifted a little bit, so your box and whiskers is going to shift a little bit, okay? So when you are following your step-by-steps, there's also a picture that you're going to see as saved to the assignment as well that has everything listed. This data set was the data set of that pretend classroom that we had from the earlier lessons when we were doing like mode and median and range and so forth. So if you remember, I think we had 4 little tiny guys as those 4 centimeters tall, and Buzz Lightyear, Woody, and Jessie were the tallest ones with some Barbies and some Ninja Turtles in the middle. But I took that same set of data, and you'll see that I found the medians, I found our quartiles, I found our minimums and our maximums, and just had this great picture representation of what was going on. There's a new word in here known as IQR, so I'm going to take you over to the other board and kind of explain what's going on with all of this, okay? So back over here, one last bit that kind of has why we have box and whiskers and some things that we can notice. So this was a picture from the book, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but it's discussing 4 box and whiskers stacked. One was I guess they're all graphing the heights of middle school students. This one is graphing 8th grade heights, 7th grade heights, 6th grade heights, and 5th grade heights. And here are some things to note. So as we're looking at these box and whiskers, when we were doing the variables and patterns book, and I know the math 2s and math 3s got to the variables and patterns book, but I think the math 1s were part of the way in. I'm not so sure how far in you were when we had to leave school, but I know a lot of what we talked about was graphs versus tables, pros and cons. This has some of those similar pros and cons when we had all those discussions earlier in the year. For example, a lot of people say that they like graphs because that they could see the general shape of the data. We can kind of see the general shape of the data by looking at this. We can see low amounts, we can see high amounts, we can see where there's a lot of people. I'm going to talk about that in a second. We can see some exact data. So that was a downfall of what a lot of students said with the graph, is that you can see a general idea of the shape of the information, but not too many exact numbers. We can see some exact numbers. We can see the minimum, we can see the maximum, we can see the quartiles and the median. Sometimes that's not the exact number as what we can tell, but we kind of know some of the exact numbers. But here's what's really cool about box and whiskers. If we were talking about this families, for example, I think this is a great example. And I chose this because of my dad having 11 kids in his family growing up. That's not a typical number in that set of data. It kind of seems like an outlier, that its numbers doesn't really belong. And that shows us this really long whisker. Let's think about how this data was created. It essentially was split up into fourths, and fourths when I see my quartiles. It was split up into 4 sections, and that's what's cool about a box and whiskers. If I'm looking at these families, this is not, and I know like on a typical fraction strip, those fourths would be evenly spaced. these aren't evenly spaced, but what is even about them is that it's a fourth of the people are in this section. A fourth of the people are in this section, a fourth of the people are in this section, and a fourth of the people are in this section. So there are 3 people that fill up this part of it. There are 3 people that fill up this part of it, 3 people that fill this part of it, and 3 people that fill this part of it. This is worth 3 people, just like this is worth 3 people. But what a box and whiskers shows us is that this fourth of the people are a lot more spread out than this fourth of the people. What a box and whiskers also shows us is that if this is, let me find a marker back, if this is 1/4 or 25% of my people, every single one of these is worth 1/4 or 25% of my people. And when we're talking about what is a typical family size, this is what we're looking at. The middle 50%, half of my people are somewhere between 2 and 5 people in their family. That's typical. 11 isn't typical. We're looking at the middle 50%. Half of my students would fall within that box. And that happens for all of them. Okay, so it's not based on how long the line is. It's 1/4 in each section. So I'm going to come back to this picture that the book gives us. And we can compare all 4 of these box and whiskers. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. I just kind of wrote them down on my order of thinking. But I can see that based on these box and whiskers, which class has the tallest students. I want to pause for a second and see if you can answer that. Which class has the tallest student? And I hope you said 8th grade because their maximum of 72 is the greatest. But I could also ask a question like, what is the tallest 5th grader? And the tallest 5th grader would be 65 inches. So you can compare tallests, or you can find a tallest for one particular student. I could say the same thing for the shortest. So which grade has the shortest student? And hopefully you can answer